Hey everyone, today my guest is Mike Pearsall, who has just started a new consultancy business in the UK called Entity Shift. Mike is a one-time naval officer, originally from the south of England. He now lives in Scotland near the Glasgow airport. Fun fact, we recently found out that the naval officer's badge contains real gold thread. Mike has spent the last 15 years in the commercial world with a career spanning sales, project management, training, across a range of finance, CRM, and HR systems. Mike began working with D365 F&O when the cloud version of AX first launched, and is a contributing editor of AX7, the D365 F&O blog. You can find Mike on LinkedIn or at entityshift.com. Mike and I are also planning some projects together, and we'll tell you more about them shortly. Welcome aboard, Mike.
Morning, Chris. Morning.
Hey, what rank did you end up in the Navy?
I finished up as a lieutenant.
Ah, right. Well done. Did you want to stay on, or did you have enough at that stage?
I think I'd had enough at that point. Yeah, I'd had a decent run at it, and it was time to start my civilian career.
Perfect. Well, actually, I just did a quick introduction before you arrived. And one of the things I left at the end was the AX7 blog that you're doing.
Cool. Thank you.
Tell me about the subscriber count. How's it going now?
It's doing good. We're set to hit 1,000 this week, actually, and it's been growing really nice and steadily. It's only been our first couple of months, so yeah, we're delighted by the level of interest.
Now, I was going to ask you about FNSEM. I previously called it finance supply chain management, but you're definitely in on the F&O, right?
Oh, completely, all in. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the issue that I take with FNSEM,
I twitches when you say it.
It does a little bit, yeah. Apart from it being harder to say, my issue with it is it excludes the other two modules that are part of the finance and operations platform. So it is important to remember that HR is very much back in the fold, and quite rightly so. And of course, commerce as well is a key part of the set.
Well, tell us about
Yeah.
a bit about yourself, the arc of your career. If you give us a few seconds on how you got into AX and more recently D365, and then your jump to Entity Shift.
Yeah, well, I've had a squiggly career, I think is the term that was coined at a TED Talk some years ago. I started out in the military, specifically in the Royal Navy, spent 8 years there, moved into commercial shipping. I kind of struggled with how to transition, where to go to, and commercial shipping seemed like the only thing that was in common with the Navy. I was in some various systems and training roles. And then the last part of my time with that company, we did an F&O deployment. It was right at the very start of the SaaS platform, so it was technically AX7 when we started. And from there, I just really enjoyed it and wanted to get involved. So went to KPMG, was with them for the best part of 5 years. Brief stint with Node 4 this past year, but now starting out on my own.
Perfect. So outside of work, passions, hobbies, what drives you?
Well, I'd say my sort of two headline hobbies are curling in the winter and clay pigeon shooting in the summer. So as a native Englishman, I've gone full native in Scotland, where I've called home for 13 years.
And this explanation is not for me, it's for a friend, but can you tell us more about curling?
Curling, the fine art of sliding stones on ice.
Right.
It's the simplification of it. I was surprised actually, because I only started a couple of years ago, went along to humour a friend, and actually found myself really enjoying the tactical side of it. So yeah.
For someone who's so sophisticated and complex, it does seem you're stepping down a little bit to slide some stones on ice. What's the finer detail of it that I'm missing? Is it being able to slide in just before it hits?
The how you slide, the how you launch yourself, how you turn the stone, because that affects how it curls. Then there's the performance of the ice itself. So it's not the same ice treatment as you skate or play hockey on. It's a pebbled ice, and various aspects of the underlay of the ice, undersurface, and the treatment of the ice on top affects how it can curl and the speed it travels at, and all sorts of things. So yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of bits to consider.
And then going back, I guess one step is what made you jump into the Navy, and then the bit that made you leave.
Yeah, well, I mean, getting in was gradual. Growing up, I was always around boats, so that was an early sort of passion for water. And then I would always go to the Royal Tournament. I'd always go to the London Boat Show. And back then, the Royal Navy didn't hold back on their spend expenditure in recruitment. So the stands were extravagant. They had sort of large boat rides or Royal Marines doing abseiling from the ceiling and really sort of interactive, lots of things to see and do, not to mention lots of gizzits, as I learned they were called, literally a shortening of give us it, but free things to take away. So I always had like pencils and posters and key rings and sticky feet and that kind of thing. But I think what sealed the fascination with the Navy was the advertising campaign around Tomorrow Never Dies. So for
Yeah.
those that don't remember the detail of that James Bond film, there was a Type 23 frigate that featured, and it was sunk in order to try and start a war and make news. And
False
the
flag
Navy did
operation.
exactly that, yeah. And the Royal Navy did a great advertising campaign. Absolute credit to them, whoever came up with the idea. But it was feared by his enemies, adored by the nation, trained by the Royal Navy, and
I
that
would have
stuck for
thought
the next few years.
if you're thinking of getting on a ship, I would have thought the sinking of said ship would make you change to the Air Force or something. I would do that.
Yeah,
It's
but
like,
then you could eat. No, then you can watch all the airplane crashes, and no, there's always
true.
something goes wrong everywhere, right?
Yeah. True, true. And then so that was in and then out because,
Mhm.
like you said, there's a zigzag career, and for many of the people watching us,
Mm,
being maybe lifetime D365 or ERP type people,
mhm.
how do you feel that early officer experience is now benefiting you or your clients today?
Yeah, wow, that's a good question. So I think there's a lot to being a consultant or a
Yes.
specialist around something. On one hand, you need to know the platform. Of course, you need to have technical comprehension, the ability to tie things together. You need to have the ability, though, to problem solve. You need to have the ability to communicate, work together as a team, potentially to lead that team. And
Yes.
all of those skills are in spades in the military. Every single day, we undertake training, drills, activities that really cement those skills within the individual person. So yeah, although it's definitely not a standard path, it's not one that I think many other D365 consultants. I do know a couple with ex-military backgrounds, but yeah, it's the skills are transferable, and I actually wish I'd realised that earlier on.
Yeah, I get the feeling with a lot of consultants, they can make promises and not deliver, and it doesn't eat away at their soul. I'm taking it from your military background. If you say you're going to do something, it is your honor almost to get it done. You've just given someone your word.
Yeah, absolutely. There's this sort of sense of duty that carries that was instilled in me in a young age and carried through my service and remains with me today. I'm also something of a people pleaser. So I hate to disappoint. I don't want anybody to feel that I've let them down, particularly not if I've made any kind of promise or commitment. So yeah, there is very much a case of delivering on what's required, what's asked of.
Who was your hero then? Was it someone in the Navy or earlier or more in tech?
No, it's more cliche and simple than that. It was my grandparents. All
Yeah.
four of them served at various stages in World War II or the Cold War. And that's why I say it was kind of I was exposed to this from a young age. They all had their various
Yeah.
stories of Army, Air Force, auxiliary nursing. And yeah, it just kind of it planted this seed. If we really go back, it
Mm.
planted this seed of doing something for the country. And I think that's something that, yeah, without going off piste, it's something that we're seeing a little less of in the world today. I think people tend to be a bit more selfish, and I do worry what that means in the long term.
I see also there's another aspect because being from Australia, we have the Anzac tradition. And one of the things that really sticks in everyone's mind is, what happened to the Anzacs over in Turkey and the idea of cannon fodder. And where do you draw the line between giving your life, so to speak, for the country and this idea that someone is maybe misusing that honor to actually
Mhm.
just put you in harm's way? It isn't being thought through, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Look, there's been some similar examples made with various core in the past. You could argue the invasion of Iraq was that conducted correctly? Was it on the correct legal grounding and all sorts? When anybody goes into a situation like that, when those men, and at that point it was just men in Gallipoli, they weren't doing it necessarily for their country. They might have been doing it for their families, but the people they were really doing it for were the people stood next to them. That's why you go in. That's why you stand strong. I mean, goodness.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
why you stay there. That's what I was going to add.
Hmm.
Okay, well then jumping across then to AX7 D365,
Mm.
you would have come across zillions of consultants. To just distill that out, what are the key qualities that makes an awesome consultant? I've got my own ideas. I'd love to hear yours.
I think the skills that make a consultant, I've kind of touched on them already. Obviously, there's the technical functional component. There's communication is really important, and that's both written and spoken. But there's another level to that, and that's the ability to call out a customer who maybe is absolutely determined that the way they do something is the right way to do it, and is therefore so inflexible, at least by default, that they won't adopt a new way of doing things, which perhaps is the natural way that the platform allows. So you do see, I have certainly seen a number of cases where an individual has got tremendous platform knowledge, and actually then their ability to say, well, no, look, this is why we need to be doing it like this, however this might be. So problem solving, that ability to challenge, the ability to listen, um, all key parts. Working together as a team, stakeholder management as well, as kind of a different angle to communication, but managing your people.
If you had a consultant that was either more people person or more technical, which one would you prefer? The skills, at least. What would you
Yeah,
want them to go towards to deliver?
I don't know whether or not you meant to or not, but that alludes to the evolution LP consultant. I've seen some very good people come into consulting with not much in the way of the technology understanding and do really well, because actually it's quite straightforward to go to the Microsoft Docs pages and to check something, to refer to how to make it work, than it is just to flick a switch and become someone who can communicate or solve problems or work with the team. So yeah, I would prioritize those with the soft skills, I
Hmm.
think is one way of describing them, rightly or wrongly, over those with the hard technical skills.
And then how did you end up mastering D365? Did you actually open a book and go, I read from A to Z? No, you broke things.
No, no, exactly.
I love
Yeah,
people who
yeah.
break things. They go off, on, that didn't work, off, on, and eventually they've got a map of the whole system.
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. I love tinkering. So I remember near the start of the call, we were talking about hobbies, including curling and shooting, but actually I didn't mention home automation. And most of my house runs through an automation server on Home Assistant, and that has very much been a case of tinkering, building things up. You know, an automation, the first time you write it, doesn't work how you imagine it will, so you're constantly going back in and changing it and refining it. And my approach to learning F&O has been exactly the same. It's been getting my hands on, tinkering with things. Every time something new comes along as well, I get involved and start playing with it. So as soon as Power Platform was made a tool that us F&O could play with, I was in there making flows and building Canvas apps.
Can I ask for
Mm.
a confessional? If I asked you to confess to a sin or a crime, did you, with your D365 F&O instance, run up one instance of Power Automate, Power App, and then connect that through to and use that for both dev and production? Or did you actually split out your environments as well?
I mean, that was only playing. That was only playing in Sandbox.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. I've since
I know a
I've
lot of
taken
people
things
who
to
do the
live,
mixture.
but no,
Yeah.
no, no. You've got to take the solution across.
Yeah.
You're catching me out there. Play in the
Well, what
sandbox. Always play in the sandbox.
it's true, and I've seen that isolation occur inside D365. But what I've noticed with the new environments, which are typically aimed at the low code, no code type people, it's that it's tempting and teasing people to have a go becomes really a great proof of concept. and then they want it to go live. And because you've built all your hooks into it, it's
Mhm.
very tempting for other people to actually just turn it on and say, let's go, because it's in Azure, but it's not isolated. And as a
Yeah,
result, well, if things go wrong, they don't have an alternative environment.
exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
what would you say if we have D365 consultants listening and they say, I would like to become just like him? That's you. Uh, how would they learn? Should they do? Doing it right this time to get into D365? Would you say go away, get your certs first, then come and get experience, or vice versa?
Um, right. Well, the first part of that is I wouldn't advise anybody to try and be like me, not least because of my squiggly path to get here. So if you want to be an ERP consultant, don't follow my route. But no, it's but the sort of serious angle to that is be yourself. Actually, it's be human, because apart from anything else, with the growth of AI, human traits are going to become more and more
Yes.
important. But the key skills that make somebody successful, or what to do, how to approach doing this. Look, I think there's people that are specialists in this world, and there are people that are leaders and generalists. Don't be afraid to be one or the other.
Okay.
We need everybody, right? You can't have a general stood there giving all the orders if nobody actually knows how to fire a gun or drive a tank or cook the meal that the army marches on their stomach. Yes, I'm making some military analogies there, but the overlap is remarkably common. That you need to be a specialist. Well, sorry, you can be a specialist or you can be a generalist. Both will succeed. So choose your path based on what you enjoy, on the some skills will come naturally, some can be
Hmm.
developed. I think that's probably what I'd end on
If you had an awesome consultant that isn't certified, would you not choose them?
there. Not at all. No, I don't. How to put this politically, diplomatically? Look, the certifications are great for graduates. I think for those like really just starting out on a training program to talk them through some concepts, but nothing at all beats the real world experience. You
Sure.
can go back and refer. I've said this before, and I will say it again. The soft skills need to be worked on. The technology skills or rather the knowledge will just come over time. The more you do something, the more you try it. You reference the docs sometimes, you'll get something wrong. Other times, you'll test it. You'll spend time trying to figure it out, and you'll spend more time trying to figure it out than you will if you just went and asked somebody, "How do I do this?" But then you'll absolutely know how it works, and that's where that real world experience, both in configuring and on the business side, is so much more valuable. That's where I would always put my steed.
Gotcha. I'm actually doing some consultancy work with an existing D365 project. The project manager has no D365 experience, and they took the role, get some, but in actual fact, I see a lot of the bumps and lumps that happen because they simply don't understand that practical background, whether it's development, whether it's the migration of data and code between environments, or even actually knowing the functionality where they're actually wrongly agreeing to code being written when that feature has been available for the last couple of years. So I can't imagine a
Yeah.
person without practical experience actually becoming a project manager
Mm.
and being given the reins of a multi-million-dollar project. But it's actually happening. There's such a shortage of
So
D365 people.
really, so see, if you told me clearly this person is not an ERP project manager, then
Right.
there's transferable skills and understanding. If they're a construction project manager, it's a different game, right? Building a bridge is
Yes.
not the same as building or configuring, testing, and deploying an ERP solution. Also,
They are
it's
into
any sort of
software.
this. Yeah,
They're just not
they are for
into
software. Okay.
they're just not into ERP. And as you know, there's a very special way that
Mm.
reconciliations, integrations occur. You can't
Mhm.
fake being a cent out or $1 million out. You just can't fake it. It has to be
No.
locked in and tight. So
Yes. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if design decisions are being made, if the project manager has a seat at the design authority, then I mean that better be because they're holding the principles of the project, not because they're in any way reliant on their knowledge. And look, this comes down to the person, because there are some project managers out there who have been consultants, for example, and that's different. They bring different knowledge to the discussion. But if we're talking about a a pure project manager, whether they've got some platform knowledge or not, they shouldn't really be the person making the call on things like, is this a customization, is this configuration, or somewhere in between.
True. And they actually may not know when someone is, inaccurate with a decision to use
Mhm.
code or config. They're
Yeah,
almost, I guess, blind to it. So what
yeah.
excites you about the next steps of D365? I know Power is in there, Power Apps in particular, and everyone's
Mhm.
going for that. What else?
Oh, do you know what? I'm not convinced everyone is. I think a lot of F&O consultants are still, and I'm by no means making an estimate on that number, but I think there are still plenty that are in the F&O world, and all things they do. I do all things finance, or I do all things supply chain, or I do all things HR, very much stuck in their silo. Now, the HR folk will be more open to what's coming from the Power Platform side, because it's the pivotal part of the future of what's coming in HR. And that's really obvious in the roadmap, more and more Power Apps in particular. But there is still a piece of work to be done to excite some consultants into what Power Platform brings, and that is still, to that end, is still part of the future of F&O. The You can't ignore AI in this. Pilot within F&O is in its infancy. It's quite evident. It's been playing around with it. It's not where you imagine it would be yet. I know it will come. It will absolutely come. The sheer rate of change that everything is going through at the moment means we will see everything that we hope for in that regard.
Yes.
So yeah.
I'm not seeing how the large language model can actually fully integrate with the structure of D365. So if someone were to say something simple like, give me my trial balance or my profit and loss, there is great structure around that. It's a known thing. But as you know, if you
Mhm.
drill into a table and you say, I want my active customers with this specific field turned on and that specific filter, it
Mhm.
hasn't yet got to that level where it knows what to turn on and off and what
Mhm.
specific options to give you to filter. So it's
Yeah.
a very accurate filter for a query that your company uses.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anyway, I agree
Yeah.
with you. It's a starting
Exactly.
point. So is that the trend that you see people are talking about the Power Platform, or is there anything else, whispers you're hearing in the marketplace?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's anything else particularly. What I would say is that we need to be careful when we're talking about the bleeding edge, and everybody's very excited about AI, but it's digital transformation. We're still in that era. We mustn't leave behind the businesses that actually are still doing things on paper. And I'm talking about large listed companies, corporations that still have paper-based operations. They still exist. Equally, there's enormous companies still running DOS-based applications.
And
They
AX.
only well, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, gosh, that's positively recent. There have been
yeah.
organisations that only finished implementing AX about 4 years ago, despite it of course being a legacy product as of 2 years ago. But there's still a journey of improvement to get everybody onto evergreen platforms, hopefully in the cloud, logically in the cloud, or on-prem if they're insistent in that direction. But the point to make there is that we can risk focusing too much on the future and not remember that there's still a large volume of businesses to bring with us on the journey.
True. Do you know what? Can I share a pet peeve with you about some consultants that I work with in the marketplace? They have not used some of the products that they're recommending. So I have to go into damage control and reverse out what they've told the potential client. They said
Right.
in front of me, try this Microsoft Insights, for D365, and it does this, this, and this. They're they basically got a brochure, maybe it's under the table, and they're reading from it. And then they tell the client who's sitting opposite me, and my eyes roll and they go saucer shaped. And I then have
Mhm.
to say, well, and then I give them the other part of it, which is Microsoft's created a stub. They're giving you
Mhm.
two examples on a web page, and we're not actually able to give you a finished product now. We will have to build it
Mhm.
with you, which is
Mhm.
great if that's what they're expecting. But a lot of the times with Microsoft quality, people expect very high end,
Mhm.
and they have to understand that many things are in the process of being developed, like Copilot, for example. The way it's made to seem is you can just ask it anything, and before you go to sleep, you can ask it some queries, and then it'll end up as little emails, and you wake up and you can run your business.
Yeah, there's a lot of community beta testing under the banner of GA.
Yes. Yes, I think for all Microsoft employees, somewhere our ID is giving us some, I
Yeah.
don't know, maybe it'll give us shares in the future, but
We missed the line in our contract, right?
yeah, yes. So, okay, we talked about the future, the trends, the biggest challenges do you feel is still out there for D365 consultants?
Yeah.
Something that they're not getting or they're missing?
In the broader sense there, it's remaining relevant in the world of AI. So yeah, for that's as much for established professionals as it is for the newcomers. The established folk who, as I say, are more inclined to their silos, or at least the silo that is F&O, to make sure that you break out of that to keep relevant, learn some things about the Power Platforms you haven't already understand, and start getting involved in using AI, understanding it, and playing nicely with it because it's not going anywhere. And interestingly, I asked Bing Copilot the other day. I thought, what's the lifespan now of a solution architect? Copilot suggestion, it was 5 years. Now, of course, we're talking about a large language model. It's bringing together lots of different ideas, things that it's found in search, and it's just compiling thoughts. But if for a moment we pause and we think, no, maybe it's right, maybe it's got the right answer somehow, that's scary. So how do we keep relevant? And that's where I go back to human traits will win over things like curiosity, ambition, and creativity. We can retain an edge at least until AGI, general intelligence,
That's
completely
it.
takes over.
It's all over. You can actually, I don't know, grow some grass, feed some sheep.
Yes, yes.
So, with AI, do you see yourself being the interface in the future between machine and humans? Do you imagine yourself as that, or do you see yourself creating some sort of tool that the client has that interface and is using it themselves? What's
Mm,
the point that you give up your role, or is it,
mhm.
enhancing your role?
Yeah, so I think that's where AI, in its current form and its short-term iterations, will continue to enhance roles. You need to be able to look at anything critically. You cannot just take what it gives you at face value. There are still too many hallucinations and mistakes, and if it doesn't know something, it goes off on a creative path, which is lovely. But if you're trying to get an accurate technical answer, is no help. So learning to master the AI tools that we have and will have in the short term is essential. With as we move into AGI, goodness knows, something I'll often sort of sit and reflect on. Maybe if I'm out in the garden, I'll be thinking, what does that actually mean? What does it look like? What does the world of business look like when there is a single intelligence or multiple iterations of an intelligence that is greater than our own combined? Why would we still be in the workplace? So what then does that look like? Universal income or goodness knows?
I was reading about this and the cycles that we fear, like for example, we're just seeing AI come out and we fear an instant impact. There is obviously a level of impact that continues to grow over time.
Mm,
So we do have time to transition, as you're saying, for consultants. But I'm wanting to share with you this concept that I I remember doing this AX 2012 implementation, and we took 1 million lines of progress code when we cut it down to 100,000 lines, which was this custom module that went in for a complete management company. And so that was a great outcome in their eyes. And then they're now going from AX 2012 to D365, and they're going through the process where they hope to eliminate altogether the 100,000 lines of code. Again, it's another multi-year project. But there's a
mm,
secret. Maybe this ties into you being told there's no future for, solution architects after 6 years, is because once Microsoft gets us all onto the D365 platform with its quarterly updates, with some tweaks being made, there is no big bang upgrades anymore for that product.
mm, mhm.
It's whoever's in there is likely to have a lifetime customer unless they mess up. But
Yeah,
it's quite interesting to see that shift where there's these businesses built around mega implementations, but maybe the market a few years from now will dry up because anyone who could would. Maybe you have to move to the smaller end of town, Business Central, for example. I'm just trying to think
maybe.
through once you
Yeah,
get through the pipeline, how many years of that pipeline is left? I don't know.
yeah, yeah. No, it's a fair point. Fortunately, I think the pipeline is pretty large. It's pretty, the top of the funnel is
A lot
pretty
of paper
broad at the
based.
moment. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
indeed, indeed.
And then coming back to your point about AGI or even just using Copilot, there are so many
Mm,
companies at different phases of D365. It probably represents just a small percentage of the functionality they're using. So there's probably this whole spectrum of businesses that need to be moved from low
mhm,
level to medium to high before they even get to AI
mhm.
level.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Getting that data right in the first instance. Otherwise, the AI is working with rubbish and garbage in, garbage out.
Okay. So I think we've solved it. There is still work for a lot of the younger consultants. Keep going. Don't pike out. Go swimming.
Yeah.
Keep studying. There's plenty of work.
Oh, but look after yourself as well. So do go swimming.
Oh yeah. Okay. So advice for users. You talked about the areas that they should focus on. You talked about the Power Platform. Is there
Mm.
anything that you would say to friends, family about getting into D365? Any
To,
specific area?
to friends and family.
They're always looking up
um,
to you, and Uncle Mike has all the good advice.
well, look, when we were at school, most of the or a substantial number of jobs that exist today were not even a thing. I mean, I remember
Yeah.
doing this. Don't know if you had a similar program on your side of the world. You must have done. It was a careers advice program. I remember the DOS
Yeah.
interface asked you a series of questions, and the two suggestions it gave me were I should either be a lighthouse keeper or a tank driver. I like to think that somehow I merged the two when I found myself stood on the bridge of a ship. But seriously, though, the point I'm trying to make there is that we didn't have social media consultants or
Sorry,
social media managers.
was I meant to laugh at that one? Sorry about that.
No,
I
it's
should have
good.
a canned laughter.
Should we rewind? Do you want to have
Yeah,
another
yeah, yeah,
go?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You go.
No, the point was that there are jobs today that didn't exist.
Yes.
And I think the prediction is that when the children of today, so my kids are 8 and 3, when they come of age, when they're entering the workplace, who knows what jobs are going to be available for them. So um, I think it just goes down to that same point. It's just focusing on soft skills, as many as much sort of appreciation of technology, but also the real world as possible, rather than trying to, don't set your sights on a particular path today, because who knows what's coming next.
I'd love to hazard a guess. I would say if you're a developer who's average, get out of development, get into functional, get into people-based presenting of features, getting things turned on. Because what I'm seeing with Microsoft and other application providers is more and more things are becoming configurable. And so
Mm,
this idea of having to drop down to code is getting less and less, unless, of course, you're a smashing developer. And I know a couple, and I would hire them in an instant at whatever rate they choose. When I need to write code, my go-to person. But if you're
okay.
not the top of the pops, I would step away from those people and say, get into functional, because configuring things is going to be the way of the future, turning things on and off,
Mhm,
paying for those features, and then sharing with the client how to implement them because there's change management, there's planning, there's budgeting that needs to be done for the resources that do it. So all
mhm,
these things they may be alien to them, these are
mm.
developers. So if
Yeah.
they start to learn something, if they've got another 30 years of their career, stop sitting in the back room and maybe come out and start understanding what clients need and want.
Yeah, yeah, I think you've got a point there. There's a curve, right, or a line, depending on how you draw it, between those that can't code at all, the complete no coders,
Yep.
through low code to professional developers, and it's possible to find a place in the middle, at which point augmenting your skills with functional understanding and perhaps building those soft skills would be beneficial. Yeah,
Yes.
that's fair. I'll go with that.
It's funny because with the developers that I know, if I say I want to put this field on an email that goes out to say my customers, they go, I can write
Mhm,
code for that. And they don't know or want to know that there is a field that you can insert into the email that just puts the client's name, right? So they'll go
yeah.
write 1,000 lines of code, they'll do their daily rate charge, and they just feel like a legend because it's custom code. That's all they're a hammer and they're looking around for nails. And all I'm suggesting is put the client first and see
Mhm.
what solutions are already there that maybe you could piggyback on. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go with that.
Okay, so you gave me some ideas about your values. Integrity is one of them. It's on your website, entityshift.com. Can you tell me about the other two that you've got on there? And why does it strike you? Because you seem to me like a person who wants to have an impact in this world, and
Mhm.
putting your values up there was a bold move.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I'm pretty relaxed about the fact that I'm not going to be changing the world anymore. I mean, I don't think I ever was. Look, the other two values you talk about, or the three values in their entirety: integrity, agility, and quality. Integrity goes to the heart of being honest and delivering on what you say. Agility goes to the flexibility to change to a situation, to say, okay, we've got a different problem that's arisen, so what are we going to do instead? And quality is just trying to ensure that the best possible outcome is achieved. So
How did you come up with the name Entity Shift, by the way? It sounds a bit alien-esque. Yeah, tell me.
you want to know? Do you want to have a guess? Have a guess at how I came up with it.
I'm imagining legal entities, D365. You thought maybe you're drinking some Guinness. You thought, how can I tie that into a domain name that's available? .com being very valuable real estate. And they had entity pop, entity, liquor, and one of them was entity shift. And you went, that's my baby. Okay,
I
that's
mean,
the only one.
you're
I can
not,
think of a few more.
yeah, you're not a million miles from the truth. Certainly, when I realized the word entity was available alongside the word shift, and obviously the context of legal entities, of data entities, virtual entities, that was the moment it clicked. But actually, full confession, AI. I used an AI
Oh,
search tool. I used an AI search tool to suggest company names, and I must have gone through a couple of hundred before I
wasn't a
landed
good
on.
AI tool.
Well, no,
Maybe
it
actually it's a smart tool. It says, I don't know what I'm thinking. Here's some options, 200 of them, and then you had to pick it.
yeah. Do you know what the way said tool could be improved if the developers want to know this is that so it had a feature that highlighted whether or not the .com was available. So that was our
Yeah.
criteria for me. But what I couldn't do
Yeah.
was filter the results to say only show me suggestions that have the .com available. So
Yes,
part
you're
of the
right.
reason for scrolling through was, oh, that's a lovely name, but the .com isn't available. And I was kind of set on a .com, rightly or wrongly.
So legalentities.com is obviously not available. Would you go on to legalentities.biz, .app,
App.
.io?
Well, there's no end of TLDs now, so you can go wild, right? There's always going to be something for the word you're looking for, but
.com's best, yeah.
.com, right? It's still king.
It is. Okay, so that's another good tip for that. And entity shift, who is the target audience for your company?
Primary target audience is end users. I've spent time now as an end user implementing and as a super user, and I've spent time with partners. I'm looking to get back into the end user side of life, but now with that added perspective. So I've done both delivery and pre-sales on partner side,
Hmm.
and I can bring tremendous value to an end user client right at the start of their project who might be going through a process of getting to grips with brand new terminology around a platform, blinded arguably by new terms being thrown their way and sideswiped by look at the magic AI over here and look at Power Platform over here. But actually, what are my core requirements going to be met? So that's the value that I'm offering at the very start of the engagement, and then a quality assurance throughout that everything that is being communicated is as per the words of the partner. And actually, that works both ways, right? The I don't want to imply for a moment there that it's about calling out the partner alone, because any implementation is a two-way street. It's an integrated team between the end user side, so the business process owners and the design authority, and the partner. So arguably acting as the conduit. I want to be the conduit that eases the communication between those parties.
Now, does that mean that you're at the start of a project, or if someone has an existing 365, they have a partner who doing support
Mhm.
maintenance, do you feel some problem had to occur and you swoop in and try to solve the problem? Is that
So
The use
So
case?
ideally, I'll be there at the start.
Yeah.
Just next week, I'm going to be going into a client and doing a review of their implementation, looking at the areas of importance to them, starting off with what they see their business requirements as today and ensuring that the system is meeting those requirements,
Yes.
and then looking at what their future requirements are and how they may be solved. So it's a small package of work with this particular client, but very much reviewing where they are. And that can be done during a project as well. You can take a pause, reset if you like, but take stock of, hang on, what were the priorities? What did we go into this project with an objective to achieve? Are we on track to achieve those objectives as our priority? And or have we got distracted by all manner of other shiny things or smaller issues that really don't need to be there when we go live on day one because maybe they're low frequency, things that just don't need to be addressed that can be managed manually or with workarounds from
So
go
let me
live.
clarify one point on that. So are you saying that if you go in, you're not trying to win that client over so you get the dev configuration or other work? They still have their partner. Could you be sort of termed like a building inspector going in onto a construction site and checking stability of the foundations,
Yeah,
reviewing it
yeah,
and saying what the exceptions are? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, just making sure that everything's on track and that all parties are bringing what they need to the table to get the right results.
Okay, so then it goes live. Do you still hang around for the ongoing review and of how maintenance is going day to day, month to month? Or is that the end of your engagement once it goes live? Typically,
Depends
sorry.
on
Yeah.
at that point. Yeah, at that point it depends on the client's own preferences and budget. Rarely after a
Mm.
go live is that the end.
No, you're right.
Let's face
That was
it,
a trick
right?
question. That was a trick question, and you did pass. Congratulations. There's the
So there's
theory and there's
always,
the practice. Yeah.
yeah. In an ideal world, you go live and then everybody's smiling and happy and the system's working exactly as we all dreamed it would. But that panacea, that utopia doesn't really exist. There's always iterative improvements. There's always reviewing. There's always new features coming through. So there's certainly a role to play where clients see my value.
I do everything in my power with clients to split the functionality that they're trying to implement and the split
Mhm.
the deck of legal entities that they're trying to go live. And I just want to put a grid. I say, here's all your legal entities, here's all the functionality. Can we go live with a couple of this?
Yes.
And they say, but you can do everything. You go, just trust me, let's go live. And of course, you go live far quicker with that.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
you either ramp up the legal entities or you start adding on the modules. So I can see your point that a go live doesn't necessarily mean the end of the game. It's possibly the end of the beginning of the game. I think it's to paraphrase Winston Churchill or that approach, which is don't
Mm.
ever think this is over, baby.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. That's it. No, I'm right there with you on the piecemeal approach. Focus on the burning platform. Look at what will have the highest impact on the business. So deal with things that are managing 80% of your revenue, and leave the rest. Right, there will be a team there in business as usual to get things over the line. And gradually, then you can, once you've got the system in place, people have been using the system in practice, not just in a training context, and things have settled down. I mean, goodness, when you go live, you've made all sorts of assumptions during the configuration and testing phase, and then suddenly you've got all of the unhappy paths that emerge. Oh, we didn't anticipate this possibility or this variant. So
The
let
edge
all of
cases.
that, the dust settle, and then take a breath and start with the other areas further down the Moscow ratings. Yeah.
And you know what? Also, we're always talking about D365 as if it's the center of the universe. But truth be told, in every enterprise I go into, they've got 100 other apps. And I'm
Hmm.
always disheartened to see once D365 goes in, they put a little circle around it and maybe have a few integrations. But I want to see the consultants I know expand out and take that approach to integration more seriously to get
Hmm.
more apps either feeding data in or taking data out of D365 because I don't understand why many of these other apps still exist.
Hmm.
They're sitting around with their own sets of customers or a master data being separately, independently maintained, you know that that feed could come from D365. Painful.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Master data and how you manage that, where you're housing it, get rid of the duplication. There's still so much of it. Again, this goes back to those businesses that maybe have made the journey of digital transformation or begun it at least, but certainly not finished it. Yeah.
Actually, that brings up a name for your company. It could have been, you know, like you're a lieutenant, you could have been master data. If you think about it, it's a potential personality persona you can put in. Anyway,
Very good.
thank you,
Very good.
Mike. Thank you for sharing. I've gone over time with you. Thank you so much for taking the morning to chat with us from Glasgow. Any last thoughts for our aspiring D365 solution architects, functional consultants?
Well, yeah, no, thanks, Chris. And I don't have too much more to say, but I think maybe just pick up on those two words I used around the AI future, and it's be human, make mistakes, don't be afraid to make mistakes and to learn from them, get involved, and go out there and make the customers happy.
Thanks, Mike. Great words. I hope to chat with you later. I think we're meeting this Friday again for another round
Indeed.
on a different topic, and I look forward to
Yes.
that one as well.
Nice one. Great talking to you, Chris. Thanks very much. Bye-bye then.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.
Cheers.
Mobeez is a community-run organization. We believe in liberating people from the shackles of monotony, inspiring them to dream bigger and reach higher. We empower them to focus on the things that matter, growing their skills, solving new problems, and helping others on a global scale.
We eliminate manual work that stands between people and their future, preventing them from learning new technologies, unleashing their talents, and leaving a legacy that has a lasting impact.
Freedom doesn't wait. Join us at Mobeez.com.